All right, we are back. This is part two, the second video of this module one here. So we are talking about animation for the web. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you our slideshow presentation, basically the PDF that you have there within the module. You can look at it on your own while I'm talking about this, or you can look at it again later to kind of reiterate. Most of the times, just so you know, with the lecture that happens, you'll have this PDF, you'll have the other supporting files. Most of the times, the assessments are covering that information. So anything that I put into the module will be part of the assessments. So that's how you get your answers. If you look through, you will find your answers from those assessments there. For those assessments, through the information that I give you in the lecture, from what I talk about, as well as what I present to you there within Blackboard. All right, just so you're aware. Let me get the share going here, and we will get it started. Alrighty. So what we're going to do is I'm going to be showing you the presentation here and talking about what's on each one of the slides and kind of giving you some detailed things as I'm talking along. So you won't see, of course, me. You'll be seeing this slideshow presentation here, and then we'll create another video to do the next thing. And let's see, I'm trying to get this thing to go into full screen mode. So it goes into presentation mode here. Is that going to happen? Here we go. Computer is slow. Anyway, um, animating for the web, creating engaging digital experiences. So first part. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Animation Over the Web. In the next 10 weeks, we'll explore how to create engaging animations for websites and social media. That's the purpose of this particular course. Mobile applications as well. You can create little animated elements. So the idea here is that we're creating small elements that will go into the larger website, or it could be, say, an animated ad that you create for a social media post, or it will be something in a mobile app design, like say a button or a switch that needs to be have some animation to it. That's the idea of what we're creating. It's simple in talking about it. It's complicated. The complication goes into the planning, the knowledge gathering, the planning, and then the final execution of it, and how you're going to actually make it work. So just so you're aware of that. All right, you got. I am Maurice Beasley, Coach Beasley, the instructor, and this journey will take you to the world of web animation. Here's where you can reach me if you need to get in touch with me. Respond within 24 hours on any weekdays. Yes, that is true. So if you shoot me an email and it's after 5 p.m., I'm probably not going to see that email until tomorrow morning, until the next morning, just because of work. I usually answer work stuff during work hours. If it is an urgent situation or something like that, you probably want to call during the work hours if it's something like that. If it's an email situation, I'm not sure. There's no other way to get in touch with me after hours. We do that as a policy with all the instructors just to make sure that um, keeping private lives private, keeping public lives public, kind of thing. So that's how that kind of works through. Um, Time management is going to be very important for us. So make sure that you are managing your time with all the courses that you're taking. I know it's summertime and we're on a shortened time period. So we have to kind of put things together and manage time in a little more of a succinct way when it comes to this time here. All right. So what is web animation? It's interactive, so they respond to user actions most of the time to create a dynamic experience, unlike traditional animation where they're just watching stuff happen. So instead of just things moving around, and it could be a banner ad like that, you can create a banner ad and it's just things animating and moving around. Hopefully, it stops within a few seconds and then it starts up again to attract the eye. Get the person's eye looking at that particular thing, and then they can finally interact with it by clicking or touching it, and then it takes that banner ad takes them to whatever's being advertised to that website. Or it could be something that is subtle, like a drop down menu. So that's the functional part. Beyond entertainment and web animation serves specific purposes within the digital interface. A button, a toggle switch, a slider, a drop down menu. They have a function, they have a purpose, but you just gotta, you want to jazz it up, as you'll hear your bosses and stakeholders call it. And stakeholders are people who have money, but they don't want to be called your boss, so they're called a stakeholder. Hopefully that makes sense to you. It's just people use different words nowadays to correct for the same function that's happened back in the day. So your stakeholders will want you to jazz up the presentation. Can you jazz it up? And they always do the little jazz hands thing, like they'll wiggle the fingers. And like, okay, what is jazzing it up? What does that mean to you? And they have no idea what they're talking about. I don't know, jazz it up. No, I don't know, because you have to explain. Let's create your vision that you want. So it's going to take some time, but the animation is one of those ways of jazzing things up to make something look good. Responsive, part of that functional thing. You want the animation to be responsive to your user input. Whether you're adapting to different screen sizes or device capabilities, like you're going from a web page on a laptop screen versus on a desktop screen, monitor versus on your phone. Does the animation do the same thing, or does it break? Or is it necessary even? Because sometimes it may not be necessary. You may want to do something else that's not as complicated on the smaller screen than something on the bigger screen. So that's the responsive part of it. So you want to make sure that you work on these different things and make sure that you're incorporating it in what you're doing when it's necessary. Last message down there at the very bottom here of the screen. Web animation refers to animated elements incorporated into websites and digital platforms. Unlike traditional animation for film or television, web animation is interactive, responsive, and sometimes serves a specific function and purpose beyond just entertainment, just statements. But I have to go through the process of saying these statements. Hold on, making sure I'm still in order. Different types of web animation. This is again going into just a little more details of things. Interface animations, button hover effects, transitions between pages, interactive elements that respond to the user actions. Storytelling animation, animated explainers, like words that will pop up or fly through, or interactive narratives that convey complex information in engaging ways. Think of a news broadcast for a second. That little box that will pop up on the side while the anchor is talking about a particular story. They'll have a little box that'll pop up that either could be a video or it could be just a person's face or something like that. That is an animation that has to pop in and pop out. So how is it going to pop in? Is it going to slide? Is it going to fade in? Is it going to grow and shrink? What is it going to do? So you can have those type of things to engage your user in many different ways. Decorative animations. These are usually going to be background things, like moving, stuff moving in the background that could be not distracting, but you can have a little bit of subtle movement. Loading screens. When you're having something load up, you want to have like a loader screen. Where there's just a little slider that pops in and kind of loads and shows everything growing, or maybe it's an entire scene happening. That you want to create. Data visualization. This is a new thing and a big thing nowadays, where instead of the graphic bar charts and pie charts and all these other different charts that we used to look at all the time, looking at data from Excel, in the presentation. Now we want to see that stuff move. We want to see that bar chart still, but we want to see it kind of do an animated growing effect kind of thing. And then as it grows, it grows and shrinks, and then settles down. And now we're looking at the data. That's the kind of thing for data visualization that's kind of cool. You've probably heard the term infographics. Infographics is that same idea, just for a still image. So something you maybe create in Illustrator. That would be the still image. That would be the infographic showing you the data from an Excel spreadsheet or something like that. But then when we do the PowerPoint presentation, because this is how it works, when we do the PowerPoint presentation, we want to have this data just kind of fly in off the screen and like form itself up on here. Can we do that? First, you tell them stop watching Marvel movies, because that is not how that's going to work. Can it happen? Yes, but not in the way that you want it to, because that's way too extreme. It's going to take way too much time and planning to get that to happen. but you could do small things, and the small things can make it look like it's a super huge deal. It doesn't take much, but it still takes work. And that's the thing that you have to get your shareholders, stakeholders, bosses, peers even to understand that things take some time. Why use animation for, on the web? Stand out from competition, build brand relationships because people are more attracted to the things that move, especially nowadays. Everybody wants to watch a video instead of reading a book. That's just the way things are going nowadays. But the information that's in the book has more information, but they'd rather get the information in short, small bits with a video. So with the animation, you can attract more eyes because things are moving and people be like, "Oh, what is that?" And then you can get them the message. Capture and maintain attention is that particular part. Explaining concepts through motion. Sometimes you can enhance the communication because just putting a bunch of words up there, people kind of zone out. But if you're having something moving, along with the words that kind of enhance looking at it, make it appeal for people to look at just the words by making them, dissolve on the screen or something, or they fly in and fly out and they pay attention. Guide users and provide feedback. That is the main thing um, for web animation, guiding people's experience, taking your user and telling them, hey, go here by making an arrow appear and kind of making it move over to the side, or click on this by making a button like, pulsate or something like that, where it stands out using these different kind of concepts. You got to create these different animations in a proper way that makes them stand out. Because that's the main thing. It's like, not only do you want to make it a functional thing, but you also want to make it appealing. And it's a balance. It's a very delicate balance here. Different methods for animating on the web. One is CSS animations. This is code writing. So CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. It is part of a web page build. So if you don't know about coding, you're going to learn a little bit of it through this course, just a little bit of it. We have other classes that we teach that go in a little bit deeper in the code writing side of things, but we're going to try to keep it as simple as basic as possible to get an understanding. You don't necessarily have to do this yourself. Sometimes you will have help with a web developer, somebody who's more of a coder, while you're creating the visual aspects and making things look good. They'll be working with you to kind of get the code writing done. But cascading style sheets is part of the HTML side of writing a web page. So when you build a web page, HTML is the structure of the page. It is basically how everything is structured and where everything is sitting. Kind of like the building of a house. Like you got to build a house with a blueprint. HTML is that blueprint that says where everything is supposed to go and how you're supposed to build it. And then CSS takes the content that you put into that building, the words, the pictures, the videos, the animations, and gets them to look the way you want them to look. So CSS is more the aesthetics, how everything looks, the size of the text, the color of the text, the which font you're using, how large or small the video is going to play when it's playing over here, how much space that this animation is going to take up, things like that. Now, one of the additional things that you can do in CSS is animate things. Now, why would you do that? Well, instead of doing the traditional animation in a program like Adobe Animate, which is where you can create these SVG animations, you can use JavaScript and CSS to actually make it animate by code. Now, if you're using CSS animations or JavaScript animations, it is complicated because it's code that you have to write, and you got to make sure you write it correctly. There's going to be a lot of troubleshooting because you will do things like miss a dash, put things in the wrong order, write things in the incorrect way, and it will not work. And you're going to drive yourself crazy until you learn enough of the code to be able to read through it and fix. That's going to take time. But when you're using CSS and JavaScript animations, it's code writing, but it's more efficient, meaning that the computer understands the instructions that you're putting in with the code, and it can run those instructions with a lot more efficiency and a lot more speed than, say, if you did an SVG animation or you did an animated GIF, like for a banner ad or something you put into your social media, and create an animation like that. is a little more complex, a little more complicated. Doesn't require code to do SVG animations. Doesn't it only requires you to, generate or create it either in a program like Adobe Animate, Photoshop even can do it in a small extent. Illustrator can do it in a small extent. And then there's other programs like Canva, Adobe Express, and some other ones that can do SVG animations or animated GIFs with the GIF file extension. Those can be done in those different programs. Doesn't require coding, but then there comes the problem of the computer having to download that, let it render, and then show it to the user. That can take some time, and it's kind of iffy. It just depends on what you're trying to do and how you're trying to do it. Whether you're gonna, employ any one of these three aspects. Tools of the trade. These are the different programs and things that we're going to try to start using here in this class. We gave you an introduction of how the programs work, like Adobe Animate or Adobe Express. Canva, Adobe Express are kind of the same type of program. It's just Adobe Express is from the Adobe program family, so we use it here in class. Adobe Animate is the animation tool in the Adobe family of things. You take assets that you create in Photoshop and or Illustrator, you import them in along with any text that you have pre-written, and then you put these things together in a layout. And then from that layout, you will have a timeline where you're going to choose how many frames per second you want this animation to run for. You're going to choose how many frames you're going to actually draw yourself versus how many frames you're going to let the computer create for in between, and it will create the animation. We are not going to be very complicated with our web animations, by the way. We're going to do simple things. We're going to move something from one side of the screen to the other. We're going to make text appear and disappear. We're going to make little small things happen because I'm trying to get you an introduction of how the program, how the tool works, and get some simple animations done within that tool. I'm not trying to have you do very complex things. We're not making a full on, anime here. We're not making Dragon Ball Z, but you could within Adobe Animate. Adobe Express is like Canva. You have pre-made templates that you can pick from. You can edit those templates in limited ways, like change the text out, change out the pictures, change, the different graphic elements. There's even a way where you can import some things that you created on your own. You just got to make sure they're the right size. And then you turn that into a still image, or you can go and animate each individual element and have it do some simple animations, fly in, appear, disappear, dissolve in, things like that. And then turn that into something you would put up on social media. It's great for anybody that is trying to be an influencer or someone whose job it is to support that influencer or YouTube star or in the company that you're working for, you're dealing in the social media wing of that company, for their marketing. Adobe Express works great. Canva works just as great. You'll honestly want to use both because not just for class, but for your real world situations, you'll go back and forth between the two because Canva may have the template that you want, but not the animation sequence. And Adobe Express may have the same thing. They may have a template or a sequence that you like, but they just won't have the one particular thing that Canva may have. So you'll go back and forth with that. Now, the other two, again, JavaScript and CSS is, using code writing, and then HTML and SVG. SVG is always combined with HTML because a lot of times the logo of that website may be done as an SVG animation where when you hover over it, it may do something, but then that's it. It just doesn't do anything else. Or you will have another aspect of the SVG is when you're creating a mobile application. A lot of times, the animations that you do in that mobile app will be SVG animations, and you'll be using HTML to hold onto that mobile app and kind of comprise that mobile app. That's kind of the way things are going. To take some of the complications of the programming for these mobile apps out of the way. Um, where the mobile app itself is essentially just a web page that holds these animated things and these different screens, and it's all compacted together into that mobile app, and it's made for mobile devices. And it's kind of a cool thing in the way they do it. It's just a matter of going through the process. So we're going to touch on all of these different things and talk about them and show you how they work, in the process of what we're going to be doing. Animation considerations. These are things you should consider if doing the animation is important in the project, because sometimes it may not be. Performance. Is this going to slow down the website or the mobile phone or the app by putting this simple or complex animation in it? Because remember, all the assets, all the elements that you want to have animate, if they are pictures or objects that you create, those things have to upload. Then they have to process with whatever code you're writing or whatever animation sequence that you're doing. So is this going to slow things down where people are not going to wait around for it? That was the problem with Adobe Flash for a long time back in the day, because Adobe Flash, you can create this real intricate thing. Like I created these real intricate, nice looking websites. It took forever for it to load up because people are on dial-up, or people, are on slow, internet connections, back then. So it was not really the best. Brand consistency. Does this push forward the brand, or are you going to the left, doing something that's not keeping with the whole brand identity? That is a very important thing, being consistent with the brand of what you're promoting. What's the purpose of the animation? Why are we doing it? Does it serve a particular function? Is it just entertainment? Is it necessary? Another thing about things that are animated, accessibility. Um, does it, like it says, does it create barrier for some users? Meaning that people with disabilities, they want to look at the website. They want to look at websites. Well, look or experience. That's the better way to call it. They want to experience these different websites and entertainment avenues and that sort of thing. And they don't want to have the limitation of just because they can't see it well or can't hear it well or anything like that, or can't type. They don't want to have that be the limitation that keeps them from that entertainment. So sometimes animations will do that if you're doing too much things. Again, Adobe Flash was like, or Macromedia Flash was like that, where you can create an entire Flash website, none of it was accessible. Wouldn't read anything back to you. Nobody could get to anything or interact with anything other than you had to have a mouse clicking onto the different things on your desktop. You couldn't even use it on mobile because it was weird. But it's gone now. It's been replaced, and some say for the better or worse. Responsiveness. Will it work on all devices? Again, will this animation shrink to work on a mobile phone as well as grow to work on a 32-inch, screen, a monitor? You like, does it look the same, or will it function the same? Um, for that. So you got to consider these different things, and this is part of the planning stage. The thing that people don't really understand when it comes to animating anything is the planning that goes along with it and the knowledge behind that planning. Um, they don't realize that it takes this much effort to get something for a 30-second thing to happen or a 10-second animation to happen. And they just think, oh yeah, I just make it happen. No, it doesn't do that. Just because there's programs that will do that and AI tools now, and don't let me get on my high horse about AI, because well, that's something to talk about. Actually, we won't talk about AI in class as much as you think, but there is going to be a little primer about AI up there at the top in the student section, in the start here section or what have you. So take a look at that when you get a chance. Talk about what AI can and cannot do for you right now. All right, principles of animation. We're going to talk about a couple of principles with some detail, and then continue it on because I don't want to make this video too long. There are 12 base principles when dealing with animation. This is whether it's web animation, whether it's traditional animation, 3D animation, game animation for video games and all. There's all these different principles that were created by Disney animators and other animators way back in the days in the 30s, in the 1930s. Yeah, that way long that time. And it's been tweaked and developed over the years to incorporate how you as an animator should be thinking and should be processing when it comes to your creation. You don't have to use every one of the principles for everything that you do, but you will be incorporating one or two of the principles to get some simple movement to happen, as you're going along. So, without further ado, let's kind of go over a couple of these things and then we'll stop this video and talk about some more later. Squash and stretch. Principle number one is probably the biggest one because it's the one that you will notice the fastest. Think cartoons like Bugs Bunny, Woody Woodpecker, yeah, Tom and Jerry, and any of those type of cartoons of that nature. They use squash and stretch a lot because it gives an idea of weight and flexibility. And what they did in those cartoons is that they kind of instead of working in reality with the weight and the flexibility, they animated it because they were animating. They kind of stretched that whole idea by making things more flexible, making things either super duper heavy or very super light when things didn't weren't supposed to be that way. Think of taking an anvil, an anvil and dropping it out of the sky to hit something. And when it hits that thing, all of a sudden it just kind of falls into the ground, like it's hitting like rubber, like the ground all of a sudden turned to rubber, and then it bounces back up. That's squash and stretch. Or taking like Bugs Bunny and having him about to start to run, you see his body elongate as he's taking off. That's that squash and stretch in motion. That's basically how it works. For any type of animation sequence that you do, squash and stretch is going to come into play because you want to do something of a level of exaggeration to not have it root itself into our reality and to give it sometimes that sense of reality for what you're making. One of the things that we're going to do, I want to have you as an exercise, is do a simple ball bouncing exercise. Basically, drawing out a ball hitting the ground and bouncing. I'll show you the videos and that sort of thing that'll help you, create this thing. But in the lab, the first lab, creating this ball bouncing scenario, just using pen and paper or pencil and paper, drawing it out. Each one of the bounces from it falling out the sky to it bouncing. So as it falls, this thing's going to elongate a little bit, and then when it hits the ground, it's going to squish, and then it's going to bounce back up and stretch, and then it's going to elongate again, and then come up to the top, and it's going to come back to its shape, and then elongate again, coming down. It's going to hit the ground. It's going to squish again, but it's not going to go up as high, or it's not going to squish as much. So you have to create that little bit of physics, from it, and it's kind of cool with that. Um, the other principles we'll talk about a little bit more in the next video because I have something visual that you'll be able to see instead of staring at this screen. But here is the 12 principles right here in a row. Squash and stretch, which is very, very important for really any animated thing that you would do. Anticipation, motion before motion. So basically, how can I give you a good example? So think of you holding something in your hand and then you're told to let it go. You're going to move your hand slightly and move your fingers slightly before you let that thing go. So that's the anticipation. You're grabbing it a little bit or moving it up or down or left or right a little bit before you end up letting it go. That's that anticipatory movement first before the main action happens. Staging, putting something clearly in place where you know that, hey, this is the thing that's going to animate. It's not this cluttered area. You're making sure that everything fits in the right place, um, and bringing the audience to their attention so they're directed to the most important parts of the elements. Think of rain. I always use this as an example for staging. If you had an animated sequence where you had rain falling, if the rain was falling very light, and there is bright outside, well, it's a nice bright day. It's a little bit rainy. But if all of a sudden things get darker and the rain gets a little heavier in that staging, now you got a different mood that's being conveyed. It could be the same type of animation. It's just rain falling. But depending on how you're doing it, depends on what mood you create. Now, straight ahead and pose to pose. This is going to be an important thing that we're going to do within Adobe Animate with the things that we create. Straight ahead is one approach of creating things in sequence where you're drawing each individual frame of the animation. So you have what is called a frame rate. We'll talk about that much later. And in that frame rate, that means that there's so many frames in 1 second of time. And so how many seconds do you want this thing to move? That's how many seconds total you got, how many frames total you got. You can calculate it. And then you're drawing each frame one at a time, all the way through. It's time consuming, but it allows you to do a lot of subtle, small detail that helps with making the animation look smoother and making it look, exactly the way you want. Versus pose to pose, this is where you're doing what is called keyframe animation. You're creating different, what they call key poses or keyframes. You're creating one at the beginning. This is the first position of this thing. Then you later on down the timeline, you create another keyframe of this is where it's going to end up going to for this position, then it goes to this next position, then it goes to this next position. And then in between those keyframes, you can have the computer do the whole straight ahead work. Or maybe you do the straight ahead work in between each keyframe after you set it up. It's a method, it's a process. It is not anything that is, I can say, it's not anything that's too heavy that you really have to, break your head over, but it's something that once you learn it, you'll be using it a lot. Follow through and overlapping. This is where think of somebody swinging a baseball bat. So you'll notice a person with the anticipation, they'll rear back a little bit before they hit the ball. Then they start the swing process. And then once they hit and connect the ball, the bat to the ball, the follow through or the overlap is when they go around, and go around and finish the swing. So it's not just the hit, the connection, but following all the way through. Um, and making that full animation hit. And that's what that goes into. Slow in and slow out. There's a term called easing that is usually replacing the slow in and slow out term. But easing is basically easing in and easing out. With this is either speeding up or slowing down the movement in between those keyframes to get somewhat what looks like a realistic movement. And again, the link that I'll show you will have you better examples of this where you can actually visually see this. So it'll kind of make a little bit more sense in the process. Arcs. This is for movement. Think of a pendulum. Pendulums move in an arc. So it starts in one position, goes down to another position, and goes to a third position. And during that position, instead of it moving in a straight line, it's going to move in kind of a semicircular movement. That's called an arc. Almost everything moves in arcs. Nothing really moves in straight lines. Not a lot of things. A lot of things move in arc ways. In animation, and if you look at things in real life, things move in kind of circular patterns more than straight ahead square patterns. Even though you think something is very straight, it's actually moving a little bit to the left or right and wavering a little bit. Secondary action. Secondary actions could be like when a person's walking or you're doing like a walking sequence. Your animation is that person walking, moving their legs, and hitting the ground. But then the secondary action is how does that foot move when it strikes the ground? How do the arms move? How does the rest of the body? Does the head bob up and down? Those are secondary actions. That's not the walk that's happening, which is the main thing, main animation, but the other parts of that secondary action make kind of pull everything together and make the animation look as well as it needs to. Timing. This is making sure the speed of things speed up, slow down, happen at different times. Something starts in one place, stops at another, and then something else will start up right after that, or in the midst of it moving, something else goes along. Exaggeration. This is a good picture of the exaggeration, like exaggerating, facial or body movements or positions where yeah, reality, the person would probably not have their eyes bug out like this. But in an animation, it works because it shows that emotion. And you want to be able to convey that by using exaggeration a lot of times. Kind of goes into the squash and stretch thing. See, a lot of these kind of play off of each other. Solid drawing, understanding form in 3 dimensions, creates weight, depth, and balance. If you take the drawing class with us, you'll learn more about that. Being able to draw things very, very well in a 3 dimensional space, and you could translate it back into a 2 dimensional space with for your animation projects that you're doing. And then appeal. Just is this thing interesting? Are you creating an interesting animated process for what you're doing? All right. Like I said, the next video that we have, we will go through that a little bit more because you'll see more details and actually see a visual representation of that. All right. Course structure and policies. We've talked about this already. Just kind of put this in here just to show it to you again. Tools we'll use in this course, kind of going over this again, showing you one more slide of this before we're done. What are we going to do next? We have your initial assignment that is due with the no-show policy and the work ethic and the course conduct, the code of conduct, making sure that you do those things, and those got to be done by the 27th. I think it's earlier than that though. It may not be well, yeah, the 26th is Monday. Yeah, so when we come back from the 27th, when we come back from Memorial Day weekend, it's due at that time. So just make sure you have that stuff in. They kind of give you that grace because of the holiday. Usually it'd be due that Friday, but I would tell you get it done by that Friday, please. It doesn't take much. Just get it done. It's like half of a day that would take. Make sure you have everything that you need as far as the software and the course materials, and then the different example websites that I'm going to talk to you about in our next video. Just make sure you have those ready to go when we need them. Uh, Course goals and outcomes. We'll have, I don't know if these numbers are right. We won't have 10 projects. Well, actually, you will. Because I'm thinking about it, you'll have each one of the labs, which will be a little mini project. Then you'll have the three main projects. And the third main project is creating 8 different animation sequences. So you could pull from the stuff that you've made already. But in the end, you're going to have 8 to 10 different examples that you can put into your portfolio for web-based animations, whether it be an animated character, whether it just be animated objects or animated objects, something that for a mobile phone device. I want to leave the creativity up to you, but you'll have these different things that you will be able to work with. And of course, your 12 animation principles, learning them, knowing them, having nightmares about them, because welcome to your animation journey. Congratulations. You'll hear about these animation principles in every 2D animation class that you take. So intro to animation, 2D animation, this web animation, and then the 2D character animation. You'll hear about these principles because we're going to be incorporating them. So I want to make sure that you are well saturated with that information as we go along. All right, that is the end of our video here, and that is the end of this presentation. I hope you guys learned some things. I'm going to stop everything right now, and we will come back to our next video to go over the other materials that are here within this lecture, which is just the 2 different links, and then I just want to talk about the assessment and the lab when we're done with that. So I will see everybody again in a few minutes.